Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Raven's been pretty active recently talking about how they're going to change the game in future updates. And with the mid-season update this week, we can expect a lot of changes. And actually, last week, one of the initial previews that Raven revealed was a nerf coming to the Bren and the MP-40. Now, previously, we've already gone through and previewed what weapons you'd want to be using after the Bren nerf. Today, we're doing the same, but for the MP-40. What close range weapons, what close range loadouts do you want to be running after the MP-40 receives this nerf? So as we go over it all today, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new to the channel or if you have not already subscribed, right around 56% of viewers watching aren't subbed yet. And every single day, I am always covering everything going on in COD between news, updates, loadouts, tips. I got you covered with it all. So feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. So first up, this is a weapon that I really feel like is going to spike in popularity after this MP-40 does get nerfed. We're talking about the Owen Gun. When it comes down to it, this thing is not the easiest SMG in the world, but man, is it a rewarding SMG to use. It's a little bit awkward because it has a slower fire rate. Its magazine is very obtrusive, I guess you could say. It's in the way a lot, but when you land your shots with this thing, it pays off. The thing just hits. It's a strong SMG, great for sniper support, but also great for close range fights as well. So here, first things first, I actually go for the recoil booster for the muzzle on this one, just because the fire rate is slow. I want this thing to be aggressive, and that really helps out here. Pretty similar to what we do on the MP-40, honestly. For the barrel, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like any of these barrels. None of them are perfect in the way that we have better barrels on other weapons, but you don't want the fire rate and hip fire accuracy one because this is not a hip fire weapon. The precision one is reduced body damage, which also is a no-go because that's where the majority of your shots are landing. So you're left with shrouded or no barrel. And I wouldn't really go for no barrel in this case. This gives you slightly better damage drop off at long range, so it's better for sniper support, but also better velocity, better limb damage. And while it does reduce headshot damage, the power on this thing is good enough as is, where even without the headshot multiplier, it's still going to be very, very strong. So I'm going for the shrouded barrel there. I go for the basic slate reflector. No matter what, I feel like when it comes to the optic, the magazine is still going to be in the way in some way, shape, or form, right? So slate reflector is just that basic red dot. It works well. We're definitely going for a move stock in this case. Better movement speed just makes it more aggressive all around. For the underbarrel, this is where I've been a little bit torn because on most subs, I want to run skeletal or even the pistol grip, honestly, getting that better sprint to fire, sometimes some better hip fire accuracy. But on the Owen, the hand stopper carver really are must-haves because the recoil is not nearly as good as some of the other subs that we've got. Now, personally, because the carver does hurt the ADS, I'm going for the hand stop instead. Again, you're not hip firing a ton with this thing, so that con doesn't really come into play all that much. For the magazine here, 100% I'm going for the Gorenko 72 round drums. They hurt your velocity, they hurt your reload quickness a little bit, but the increased fire rate and the increased control makes this thing an absolute laser beam. Unfortunately, if I can go in and preview this some, that magazine on the right side still gets in the way no matter what. Like I said, it's inevitable. It's going to be in your way slightly, so it's something you have to work with visibility, but that's definitely the best magazine option there. 100% going for incendiary because this is a close range sub. It's going to make that great for, those close range fights and be really, really beneficial if you're able to, potentially get a knock because they are burning there. So that's a huge bonus. Polymer grip, as always, better control during sustained fire. For perk 1 here, honestly, most of these are really not all that good in my opinion. Steady, acrobatic, wreck, brace, sleight of hand, and fleet. None of these are really ideal. Now, if you wanted to, Fleet could be pretty good if you wanted to run Combat Scout instead of Amps, which is what I usually do, is just run Amps. So that could be a nice alternative to that. But honestly, I feel like Acrobatic is probably your best bet here. Better movement speed, better sprint speed. It's just going to make it more aggressive yet again. Then for perk 2, because we have Acrobatic, I don't think you always have to go for Quick. You definitely could if you wanted to, but fully loaded in this case also works pretty well. So all around, Owen Gun, absolute beast. Another SMG that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone is the Lapa from Cold War. I mean, when it comes down to it, if you're talking you want a close range weapon with a good TTK, the Lapa should be at the top of your list in theory because its TTK is basically unmatched with every other close range weapon, or every other close range sub, I should say. The thing just erases players. Now, it is a Cold War weapon, so obviously you're only getting 5 attachments. You can't use it in the Vanguard modes, and it's pretty much copy and paste when it comes to the setup here. Agency suppressor, as always, first and foremost. For the barrel, rifled is going to be your best bet here for those close range fights. The better damage and better fire rate is going to make it perfect for CQB engagements and really up that TTK to that pretty much unmatched area. I'm also going for the Tiger team. You want some better mobility on that for sure. The 40 round mag is going to be perfect. 50 just makes it a little bit too slow, and 40 is totally sufficient. And unfortunately, where I'd usually like to run like the Bruiser Grip or something, you're forced to use a Microflex LED because the iron sights on this thing are absolutely atrocious. So unfortunately, you do have to waste an attachment on an optic, but nonetheless, this thing will erase players up close. Very easy to use, great mobility, all around a fantastic SMG. Now moving back into the Vanguard weapons, the Type 100 is a very clear choice here. This thing also has a great TTK, especially for Vanguard subs. Very easy to use, way less obtrusive than the Owen Gun. So for that reason, I feel like a lot of people might flock to this. And it's also really good for those close range fights, but also some medium range as well for sniper support as well. So like all around, the Type 100 is a very well-rounded, well-balanced SMG in my opinion. Setup here is gonna be a little bit more basic. You could go for the recoil booster if you wanted to, but at the same time, you could also go for the Mercury silencer and get some better control. While it does hurt the damage range some, it is gonna help out there, and obviously you're gonna stay off the radar, whereas with the Owen Gun, you are showing up. For the barrel here, I feel like you got to go for the 374 millimeter, just better control, better flinch resistance. These other barrels really just are not it, in my opinion. Again, I'm going to go for the slate reflector. The iron sights, I'm not a super huge fan of. The basic red dot works just fine for me. For the stock, absolutely going for skeletal, better sprint to fire, better movement, very basic on an SMG. For the underbarrel here, again, a little bit torn because you got a couple of options. I feel like pistol grip is a great choice for aggression, but also if you want to just maintain good control throughout, hand stop is going to work just fine. So either of those are going to be your top two choices, I would say. As far as the magazine goes, these all kind of suck when it comes down to it, because you don't really have one that's like that usual damage decreasing but recoil and fire rate increasing, which is usually the best mags to go for. Instead, you get a 30 round fast mag, which is really not usable in duos, trios, or quads for getting multiple kills. The 36 round Russian short do increase damage, but they're also only 36 rounds, which really is not all that much either, leaving the 48 to really be the only option here. It is damage increasing, which is nice. It does hurt the fire rate and the movement a little bit, but this is really about as good as it gets when it comes to a magazine option there. Again, we're going for incendiary. Hollow point could also work well if you wanted to. Again, polymer grip, very basic here, pretty much always the rear grip for Vanguard weapons. For perk 1 here, you could try Vital. I don't feel like that's a bad choice at all. Increased torso damage would be pretty solid. Some of these other ones could also be semi-beneficial. Acrobatic, I feel like, is always a good choice if you're using a sub because that increased speed. Also Unmarked, if you want to use the recoil booster instead and stay on the radar, because that Unmarked could help out with that position concealment. But I'm going to just go basic Acrobatic, and then again, either quick or fully loaded. Either of these will work just fine. After that, we've got the Vanguard PPSH. And yes, this did actually see a pretty significant nerf a while back. This was easily the #1 SMG in the game when the integration first happened, but the nerf really put it in check. That said, this thing as a close range sub is still great. It's not going to have the versatility of sniper support like the Owen or the Type 100 would, but for specifically close range fights, the PPSH is still a fantastic choice. Here, we're definitely going for the Mercury silencer. The fire rate is great as is, so you don't need the recoil booster there. For the barrel, I like the Zach 300, not only because it's named after me, but also because it's about the only one with good pros here. If you want to go for a full hip fire build, obviously the BO3P would be great for that, but I feel like you're giving yourself more versatility by running the 300mm. For the optic, honestly, I like the base iron sights. The slate reflector just has a weird horizontal, like diagonal movement when you start shooting, so I don't run an optic in this case. For the stock, again, very basic, going for the skeletal for that better mobility. For the underbarrel here, I do feel like hand stop is probably a little bit more worth it than the pistol grip, just because hand stop's going to give you a little bit more accuracy, and the recoil here is a little bit more noticeable than on some other SMGs. So I feel like that's a pretty good option there. If you want to try the pistol grip though, by all means, feel free to do so. For the magazine, absolutely going for the Gorenko 71 round mags. This is just your basic extended mag. The Nambu rounds, I just don't feel like hit well enough for an SMG in this case. While I said earlier, those fire rate increasing, recoil increasing mags are usually the go-to. In certain cases like this where the PPSH does not have great damage output, you're hurting it even more there, which is just not worth it. So the basic 71 round extended mag is going to work just fine. For the ammo, again, we're going for incendiary. Again, we're going for polymer as well. For perk 1 in this case, absolutely going for tight grip. Give me that recoil control during sustained fire. That's a huge pro to have. And also quick in this case because we don't have acrobatic or anything. Again, a very solid SMG setup. It's not going to kill as quickly as before, but a great alternative to the MP-40 that has great mobility, plenty of magazine capacity, all around very, very fun. And then lastly, we got the AS-44, which might come as a surprise to quite a few people, but when it comes to close range weapons, that's where the AS-44 really thrives right now. I mean, for range, this thing is almost unusable. The recoil control is just brutal. It's not good for medium or long range, but for close range, this thing actually has one of the best TTKs in the entire game. It is utterly phenomenal. Now, for what it's worth, you could build this thing to be hip fire only, and it's going to be insane for a hip fire. But if you have to ADS at all, you're out of luck. It's going to be brutal. So I don't like to build it for hipfire just because it really limits the versatility. You don't have really any second option if you get into a fight where you can't hipfire. So for that reason, we're going for a more basic and usual setup. Again, you don't need the recoil booster here because the rate of fire is already insane. So I like going for the Mercury silencer here. Give me that recoil control. For the barrels, honestly, there's not a lot of great ones here. The 615 is great because it's going to help with the damage range and the controls. So like for a medium range builder, if you wanted to try and build it for long range, that'd be my first initial go-to. For a close range though, it's going to hurt your speed a little bit, but it's not going to kill it. So this is definitely an option. We'll talk more about this in just a second. The Empress though would be that hip fire build. We're not really looking at that here. The 420 is burst fire. Definitely not it. The precision barrel, better damage to the head, but also worse damage to the body. So that's not it. And then Falchion here is increased fire rate. Now this is one you could potentially use if you wanted to. It is still going to hurt your accuracy. And also I feel like it made the recoil a lot more noticeable. So I was a little bit torn on this, but it's definitely between the Falchion and the 615 millimeter barrel here. I'd recommend trying both and seeing what works the best for you. This one's going to be a lot slower. This one's going to be harder to control. Really comes down to what type of player you are, how well you can control weapons, and how comfortable you are with recoil. Now for the optic, definitely going for the 2.5 or the slate yet again. 2.5 gives you a little bit more control than slate would, which is pretty ideal, but it's still not going to be too zoomed in for close range fights. So I feel like that works pretty well, but also the basic red dot's never going to fail you in close range fights either. For the stock here, skeletal I feel like is absolutely the wave. Removed is solid, but it's going to hurt your accuracy and control, whereas skeletal is just hurting that initial firing recoil. So I feel like that's a lot more worth it for a close range build. For the underbarrel here, I'd still recommend going for hand stop just because the recoil is going to be way more noticeable. I feel like using a pistol grip or even skeletal, it's just going to be a little bit too much still, even in close range fights. So hand stop's going to take care of that. Now for the magazine, damage increasing here and only at 40 rounds is really not going to be it. The 30 Russian short is just that basic extended mag. This could work just fine, but also the Gorenko 50, better fire rate, better control, which is huge, better movement speed. I mean, that just seems very, very consistent and perfect for a close range build. The damage drop off, the velocity and the range drop off, not going to be nearly as significant in those close range fights, right? For the ammo here, you can definitely go for lengthen if you wanted to, but it's not going to be, really used to its fullest potential and its best potential because you're using it in close range fights where velocity is not nearly as important. So incendiary here would work just fine. Yeah, you lose some damage and some velocity, or some range, I should say. But again, close range fights, it's not really that noticeable. For the grip, as always, going for polymer yet again, that's a no-brainer. For the perk here, if you were going full on hipfire, gung-ho, absolutely every single day of the week. However, for close range fights, I feel like really a lot of these aren't really that worth it, but steady, ADS firing move speed, better strafe speed, pretty good for a close range build. And then for perk 2, definitely going for fully loaded, give me all the ammo in the world. So yeah, there you have it. With all that being said, those are my best weapons after the MP-40 nerf. Of course, the MP-40, depending on how much the nerf, it could still very well be a usable SMG and a competitive SMG. But if you're looking for alternatives because the MP-40 is not going to feel like it did before, these are all great options in my opinion. With all that said, that's going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new to the channel or if you have not already subscribed, this is the best place to be for all things going on in COD. News, updates, loadouts, tips. I got you covered every single day. So feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. And I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.